Hi, everyone. My name is Alan Davenport, and I'm the Professional Learning and Development Manager for Southeast Asia at Cambridge University Press. And I'd like to thank you for joining us for this session of the Cambridge Online Experience Asia. Now, this webinar is not the usual presentation from one speaker. It's a session that allows you to take part and ask questions to our panel of professionals and experts. And today's panel will have a particular focus on teaching in the secondary school context. This session will last for approximately 1 hour. And if you have a question to put to the panel, please add it to the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer it. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our panel. So first, we have Hui-Chin Wu, who some of you probably just saw with the presentation that she just gave, a wonderful presentation on community building. Hui-Chin is the head of the English language department in Funyu High School in Malaysia. She's been teaching for 16 years. She was formerly the group leader of the e-learning group, but she saw the light and found English and then she's an English teacher today. She's also a distinguished Toastmaster and current division director at her local district of Toastmaster International, and she's interested in teacher development and online teaching. Then we have Toshikazu Okawa, Toshi there. Hi, Toshi. He's been teaching English at Kindai University High School in Japan and is responsible for teacher training. He earned his master's or his MA in applied linguistics from the University of Adelaide, a grad cert in international education and IB from the University of Melbourne, and a CELT S and trained the trainer from Cambridge. And his current interests are teaching methodology, communicative language teaching, SFL, and assessment. Then we have Dawin Anduk, who has been teaching English for more than 15 years to learners of all ages and levels. She's currently a lecturer at Banking University in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. She also works as a freelance teacher trainer and curriculum designer. She earned her PhD from the University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus, an MA in TESOL studies from the University of Queensland in Australia, an MBA from Bolton University in the United Kingdom, and her research interests are pronunciation, phonetics, phonology, and teaching methodology. And Lindsay Heron, who we saw this morning, another brilliant presentation we had, who's been training teachers and teaching English to high school and university students in Korea since 2005. Currently a doctoral candidate herself, Lindsay has a master's degree in cinema studies and language education, and her doctoral research focuses on how learners reflect, communicate, and connect across difference via multimodal projects. So I think you can see we truly have a panel of expert practitioners that are here with us today. I'm so thrilled to have all of you. So I'm just going to jump right in, and I'm going to start by asking a question to our panelists related to the sessions that we had earlier. And Lindsay, I think you gave a great session on, multimodal projects and why they're important earlier. But I noticed in your session, you talked about how things that you did that were multimodal products, before the pandemic were kind of analog, and it went to a move to digital. And Hui-Chin, I noticed in your presentation, I know that you've probably always thought community was important, but you talked about the importance of community and sharing during the pandemic. So I'm going to open this up to anybody who wants to. The theme of this conference is kind of, looking back, but moving forward. How with what you've done as teachers, how have what you've done with what you presented today, how much of an impact has the pandemic had? And even though it was a terrible, terrible thing going through the global pandemic, what have you learned and what do you want to keep from it? And how much of your presentations today and other things that you've done, have you shown that you've grown from the pandemic? And I'll just turn that over to whoever wants to answer it first.
I'll do the first.
Sure.
Okay, so Malaysia, I would say Malaysia has been hit greatly, and our school just started to go back in person on the 1st of November. So looking back, I would say when the first we call it movement control order was announced last year on 18th of March until today, 30th of October. And it was a chaos when it first started, and everything was unsure. We thought it would be 2 weeks, but the 2 weeks became months and months and went on. So we panicked that time, and those things were not delegated very well. So teachers were under stress. They had to do something that they were not familiar with. And until today, we have been doing online lessons for more than 1 year, is about 18 months now. And they are comfortable with a lot of IT skills and technology stuff. I would say in the future, we are going to extend the hours of learning or the ways of learning from physical lessons to online lessons. Since students, they are so used to communicating with the teacher online, so why not we keep that? Actually, I'm particularly interested in Lindsay's topic this morning, multimodal, which we can also use it online. And if we do not have enough lesson time or lesson hours, we could do it online, and students, they are already used to it. So I hope that's the part that we can look into, and let's keep it as a hybrid model of learning and teaching. What do you think?
Well, I would actually totally agree. I love teaching online. It wasn't a huge change for me, actually, because I already did have a lot of projects, analog projects in my classes, and then I had digital projects in other classes. So for me, when we transitioned to just teaching online, I just moved our analog projects to an online format. And then I was already familiar with a lot of tech tools that we could use to manage those. So it was just a question for me of formalizing the way I gave feedback to students in an online sphere. And I really like being able to do that from home. I gotta say, my university, starting last semester, has been doing staggered face-to-face so that we have 5 weeks with the first years, and then the rest of that's online, 5 weeks with the second years, and then 5 weeks with the third years, like that. And that actually works really well because I can put all of the lessons that are most fun when they're face-to-face, I put all of those into that little 5-week grouping. And then the rest of the time, we continue to interact online asynchronously, which is a really big advantage for my students. You know, they can attend from their homes and participate around part-time jobs or whatever they're doing, which is also how I earned my all my graduate degrees, except for, you know, my first master's. I love online learning. If you format it well, and if you manage it well as a teacher, online learning can be very powerful. And the asynchronous aspects mean that students have time to think and to synthesize what they're learning. They don't feel the kind of pressure they did in a face-to-face class where they have to answer immediately. So I think there's a lot of good aspects to it. And even if my university returns to face-to-face next year, as I think they will, I want to keep at least our makeup classes online because it's just so it's convenient, and it's a great way to encourage students to really take their time and think about things. I don't know if they do, but at least some of them do, right?
I'm sure they do, and I think that's it's so powerful what you said. You know, right now it's not just about, you know, how are we going to move, but in each parts of the things we move, what do we want to keep from what we learned? Yeah, Ms. Duke, I think you wanted to say something. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, because I kind of like why I listen to Eugene and I say, yeah, okay, I'm going to do that because Malaysia and Vietnam, we kind of in the same situation. And you know that in Vietnam, we're still kind of in a very difficult situation now. Okay, so in Ho Chi Minh City, we're just kind of over the top, the head. Okay, but things are kind of still in the difficult situation, especially for education. And then if, like Lindsay, when you talk about university level, we talk about like adult learners and it'll be fine. And we are so comfortable. And then we can make the best use of all the LMS of everything. And then students can study from when they are back home, far, far away, 1,000 kilometers from Ho Chi Minh City. But then when I look back at the situation in Ho Chi Minh City now, and we look at the younger student, the more problems we have. And okay, Alan questions what we can keep and what we have to get rid of. And that is a point because do we have anything to provide to the student now? Okay, like in Vietnam now, we have so many students, like we can only provide online teaching to students of secondary school and then higher, not primary school. Number one reason, they don't have enough facilities. Okay, I think that is the biggest problem, because I did some research on how the teachers and the parent and the student are prepared for emergency situation like this, and not many of them are and the biggest problem is the availability of facility. And the second thing is students are not trained to use technology to learn. They know how to use technology to entertain, to do something else, but not to fully study online. Parents are not trained to help their student to study online. And teachers are not well trained enough to help the student to study independently without the monitoring of the teachers all the time. And so when we get back, we see the need to get back to offline classes because of the facility, because of the lack of pedagogy, and because of the lack of engagement from the student, and because of the need of the parents to go back to work. So again, how many of them can we retain in order to recycle or reuse in the real classroom? That is a big question. Okay.
And Toshi, I saw you nodding a lot there. Did you have something you wanted to add, or?
Yeah. So in my case, in our school, we started to use iPad. So all students have their own iPad. And we introduced that in 2013, which is quite early stage in Japan. And we had an iPad, but actually a lot of teachers not to try to use these iPads in their lessons. So when pandemic happened, teachers didn't know how to use it in their online lessons. And so do I. oh my God, what I can do? So we had a training from teacher, a trainer who had a Delta, and she told us how to conduct online lessons, and we were trained. And then we started to do great lessons for students. But yes, so teacher training is one of the problem. But also, I understand that online lessons are so great and convenient. But I also think there is some kind of problem, and I felt that when students came back to our school recently, when we are online, I do find myself feeling somewhat distant. That's probably because students turn off their camera, and I can't see their faces. And turning off the audio makes their reactions unnatural, right? And then when came back to the classroom and face-to-face lessons, and I ask questions, but they don't answer. It's like a Zoom situation. I felt like something like this. Yeah. So I understand online lessons are good, but I prefer face-to-face lessons. Yeah.
I do.
A lot of it
I
is
do
our
love.
learner
Okay.
A lot of it is our
Yeah.
learner preference. A lot of it is our context. I mean, it's in the chat box, going on about, the rural facilities, what we have, so there's so many different things that are going on. So it's not shocking that we're going to have like different attitudes and different approaches to it. Ms. Duke, go ahead. What did you want to say again?
Yeah, I just say that going online and at the beginning, we was kind of excited to find out, oh, what are we going to do? Oh, we have a lot of things there. It's just like the wow factor. But then after the wow factor, what are we going to do? Okay, do all the technologies we do have now, are they enough for us to really achieve the expected outcome that we want to achieve? We have to be practical, because at the beginning of the school year, we set the standards. And the student, okay, they need to learn. How much can they learn? And then at the end of the year, especially for students at the end, okay, the level like at the end of secondary high school and at the end of high school, they need to take some national exams. We have to be practical then. Okay, when they do the study online, are they ready? Are they well prepared to take the exam or not? And what do we have enough technology? Do we have enough tools to help them to deal with that kind of exam when online? Okay, but that doesn't mean that I deny the benefits of the tools, of the technology, of all the approaches that we have applied online, because I really, like, I am a teacher trainer, I'm a manager, and sometimes I had to visit to observe some of my colleagues teaching on class and online. And I realized that, okay, our teachers are so creative. Okay, with the same tool, the same technology, but they manage to use them for different purposes. And believe me, there are some ways they use that researchers haven't mentioned. And we suddenly get in that situation, and then they have to try to find some way in order to achieve their objective. And I think that in those ways, we have to have the kind of the system so that, just like Hu-Jin, you say, community support, right? We need to have some kind of sharing session where we can particularly like, okay, I'm going to have some authoring tool, so I'm going to use it for this and this and this. How about you? So we need a kind of system where the teachers can sit down, share all the things they have done with online, because the tool was created by some kind of technician, something, but we are the teachers, we are the people who actually use them, and we have very innovative way to use it, but we need to share for future similar situation, I think.
Yeah, I think that segues very much into a question that we have in the Q&A box from it's either Jolene or Jolyn. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. But this is just, again, open to all of you. Whoever wants to talk, jump in there. Do you think that student motivation then is even more crucial in online learning as compared to physical classes? What do you think teachers can do to help in that aspect? And then Jolyn says, I think a lot of teachers turn to gamification, but is that the best way? Is there another way? Is there a better way? What do we do?
Well, you know what I would say. I think it's totally very motivating for students to be expressing themselves via projects and via multimodality. And actually, I want to turn around to these questions and the discussion that I've been hearing and not ask so much, how do students show that they're ready for a test, so much as ask teachers, how do you reconceptualize what learning means? And how do you provide students with multiple ways of demonstrating mastery? I mean, teachers are creative, so think outside the test and translate and recite boxes, like move away from flashcards, although there are certainly plenty online, to purposeful communication and purposeful learning. How can you give your students tools to do that are motivating and support self-expression, rather than thinking about education the same way people have been thinking about it for 1,000 years?
Yes, I agree with Lindsay, because I think we are in the myth that we want to transfer everything that we do in the physical classroom to online lessons. I think that's a myth. Are we going to do that? For me, I would say since pandemic hit, we have no choice. Some teachers say, I don't believe in online learning. I don't believe it's effective. They are still, after 18 months, I have been hearing things like that. I would say, yeah, but what are we going to do since it's pandemic? So we had no choice but to do it. And in that sense, how are we going to do it effectively? I think one lesson that we learned from the pandemic is exams can be canceled anytime. I told my students, I say exams can be canceled anytime. In front of the pandemic, exams are not more important than your life. But learning is important. That's why we shift from the answers on exam papers to the skills that you really learn, and you are going to take it for the rest of your life. So like a question asked, like, how do we motivate students? For me, I would say we use chat box because we have about 50 students in the class. Then it's hard. So I put in the chat box, I say, okay, 3, 2, 1, start. They will start typing. And I say, first three, I will give like performance marks, so-called performance. It's just to motivate them. They see something, oh, there's a tick beside my name. So I will do it. It's exactly the same. How we motivate students in the physical classroom, that's how we motivate students in the online lessons. And I would say e-learning is not new. E-learning has been in Malaysia since 2005. But I would say it was not really that successful. Only until now, people have been rethinking about how we are going to conduct online lessons. So I say that's a myth. If we want to transfer everything to online, it's impossible. So I agree with Lindsay. We have to think out of the box. What can we do with the least that we have and the limited interaction that we have, just on the screen? So that is how community works. So let's build a community.
Like for me, in my case, I used a lot of project actually, Lindsay, in my online lessons because I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to talk to students a lot because if I listen to the teachers talk a lot online, it's just boring, right? So I just wanted to let them work together and let them research. And then on Zoom, they made a lot of presentations. And yeah, that really worked well. So when I was listening to your presentation this morning, it was really interesting. I was really excited. But I had one question, like I want to ask all of you, like in my case, we are in Japan, right? And when they work together in a group, they use a lot of mother tongue, first language, Japanese. But we are teaching English, right? So I have a lot of, conflict, should I say, don't use Japanese? Or they are working for one task, one project, and they are using their brain, and also they are reading English text, and they are going to present in English. So that's a learning, right? English learning. So what do you think about this one?
I mean, that's a perennial question, isn't it? Face-to-face or online, how much mother tongue or L1 use should we allow? I used to be very much against it in my face-to-face classes because I thought my job was to provide students with an immersion experience that they couldn't otherwise get. And then I entered the master's program at Indiana University and realized, no, actually, there's a lot to be said about translanguaging and using L1 as needed for support. And I think, as you said, Toshi, there's plenty of opportunities to use English in other ways. And then you use your L1 or mother tongue to help you understand and consolidate what you want to say. I actually let my students use L1 in class all the time now, except when we have our set English only, for 10 minutes, you can do it time. And I think especially in online classes, you can't really monitor that, right? Yeah. I don't use Zoom, my students hate it, but I do it for my advanced classes, but you know that if they go to breakout rooms, they're using L1. And that's one of the reasons I like projects. They can do it in L1 as much as they want to, but they have to produce English and communicate in different ways based on their personal interests. And I think that emulates more closely what we do in real life anyway.
Yeah, I think that the use of L1 in project and in task-based teaching, I think for me, it's a good way to help the student find more ideas. They can think more, because if you just ask them to speak English all the time in all the stages, especially for weak students, they will kind of retreat because they have the ideas. They have some ability. They know something, But unfortunately, they cannot do it in English in the L2. So if you want to make the best use of their thinking, their idea, their information, all the things, you need to allow them to express their ability first. And then for the final product, and then you could say, okay, in this step, okay, feel free. You are encouraged to use the L1. But then for the final product, you need to show us that you have ability to use good L2. And that's the final point. And you will be evaluated. Your product, not you, sorry, the product will be evaluated. Okay, and we have the criteria for the language use. But if we want the student to be engaged, really engaged in the task, in the project, I think the use of L1 it should be accepted. This is, and I use a lot of projects, I use a lot of tasks, and I do agree with Lindsay that there is no way for us to control the use of the L1 or L2 online. We can't. In the breakout, for example, I use Zoom.
You're dying to say something there, Wei-Shin. What do you think in your Malaysian context? Are you okay with that as well?
I think it's all right for students to use L1, but teachers, we have to speak English, and that's no other excuses. Teachers have to teach English using English, not using L1 to translate things. I think we can ask students, so how do you say it in English? So this is how you say it in your first language. So how do you say it in English? I think that is okay when we are going to train them. So for me, sometimes I'll ask someone, like, how do you say it in English? Okay, so you say this in your first language. So how do you say it in English? Things like that. For teachers, only English. But for students, for communication, to bridge the gap, I think is okay. But we have to control the amount of using. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, great discussion on that. Lindsay, I loved what you said, because I was just like you. 15 years ago, I was the English police. No tie in the classroom, none. But I just like you, I found myself shifting from, like, instead of English only to English as much as possible. And if you hear the L1, then think what's the hindrance there? And exactly what many people have said in the chat box, using the L1 as the bridge to get to English, using it to flow with us. I think that since we're talking about projects, there's a wonderful question from Shirley in here that I think is relevant to a lot of us as we got into this pandemic teaching, that says, hey, I found a digital form, I can't find a digital form of this analog project I like, and I want to adjust it to technology. Before the pandemic, I used to love, a certain way, they say flashcards, but now it's difficult. We have all these tools that they found on the internet, but then it requires the students to register, and I don't want my students to have 300 different accounts. How do I do all of this and not have, my students say I lost 300 passwords to my 300 accounts?
Okay, I have an answer for that, because like I said, I've been using technological tools in my classes forever, and I know what you mean. If there's a password, students will lose it. If they have an ID, they will forget it. So it's very frustrating. But I will say that's actually one of the ways that I screen tech tools. I either use the same ones from class to class and year to year. So I've got a handful that do require registration, but students can continue to use them. Or I use tools that don't require any registration. And there are a lot out there, like classtools.net is a really good way for students to make interactive crossword puzzles, or fake book, they call it fake book. It's Facebook headings, so it looks like it's somebody, and you can make like literary characters or historical figures. Or there are a bunch of different tools that don't require any kind of registration. Quizzes is a really good, that's the way, if you're looking for a variation on flashcards and more traditional quizzes in class, Quizzes is the way to do it. It'll let you create multiple choice questions, or even entire lessons, and the students don't have to register to use that. Padlet, they don't have to register to use, although it helps you identify who's posting if they do. So I think there are tools out there. And the other thing I would suggest is get your students to register for Gmail, because Google is a single sign-on that they can use for a wide variety of websites and services and tools. So as long as they remember their Google sign-in, they're probably okay for various things like some of the tools I recommended today, Canva and so on. That's all, they all allow a Google sign-in. So, but yeah, definitely that's something you should be looking at. Does the site require students to create a new ID and password, or is it something they can use without registering, or is it something they can do with Google?
Chen, I see you nodding a lot. Is there anything that you want to add, or?
Yeah, actually in Malaysia, all students are given a Google account. So they have to, they can use for this, because most of the time those websites, those tools, they only require sign in using Google account, and that solves all the problem. And of course, we only use things that are appropriate and that is useful. So most of the time, I would ask students to collaborate directly in Google Classroom using Google document, because we can actually ask them to edit in the same document so they can collaborate. And the best part is we know who typed it, you know, because the names are automatically there, and that serves a good purpose, I think. For your reference.
So I think that also segues into another question we have, and I don't know who it's from because they're anonymous. And, you know, I think, Toshi, also, since your school has been using technology for a very long time, maybe you have something to say about this, but again, this goes to every panel. Yeah, technology is great, but then, you know, especially with teenagers, do we have some issues with honesty and integrity? And here it says during assessment, but even during homework or, you know, technology use, because with the use of technology, learners can easily access information, not just during the examination, but for homework, for plagiarism, for these sorts of things. They can communicate with their peers, you know, and get the answer. How do we, do you have any tips or anything for that as dealing with that in our environment?
I think they actually do, but I just don't see. No, it's joking. But I think, you know, it's quite easy to judge if it's from the online or not, because the character is sometimes different, and the vocabulary is sometimes too difficult for high school students, and grammatical, you know, structure is totally you know, different from their usual writing. So I think we can judge that, but we also have a good system, Turnitin. Although you have to pay for that, but that's a good way to use to judge the plagiarism, I think.
And if you find something like that, I'll open this for everyone. I mean, do you think like you should, you know, immediately call the parents and say your students are terrible? Do you fail them right away? Do you have an intervention? I mean, you know, if we do suspect that that's going on, what advice would you give to teachers who might be feeling that's happening in their classroom and don't know what to do about it first?
I can share. Aside from using tools mentioned like plagiarism tracker and websites like that, normally I would tell the students, I say, your assignment is for me to assess your skills and ability. So if you copy from someone else, it won't reflect your true ability, then you won't be learning from it. So who is the one who is losing here? I'm not losing anything. Your parents are not losing anything. And you lost the opportunity for you to learn and to be assessed by me. So I'll say something like that first. Then, of course, there are some people who are lazy enough to copy. And I'll say, well, you have to take it because you lost the chance. We know that if we check it, of course, you know, the marks for the assignment will be lower. But then, of course, I say I really pity the work, okay, the time you have spent to copy, and you really learn nothing from it. So I would say something like that. And then I say, even like doing tests or quiz online on Google Form, I'll say it reflects what you know and what you don't. From there, you know how you are going to proceed and how you are going to enhance your knowledge or skills. So if you did it using other methods, and it won't reflect what your true ability is, and you lost the chance of learning on and knowing your own ability. So mine are high school students, so when they think about it, so we have to like motivate them from the intrinsic motivation, so that they think every chance of doing assignment or test is a chance for them to learn. So I think that's important to, to make sure that marks are not the main thing here. Is actually your opportunity in learning.
Well,
Actually-
I did the same. Sorry,
No, go ahead, Ms. Duke, and then we'll go to Lindsay.
Yeah.
Ms. Duke, go ahead.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing, especially with my writing classes. Okay, we have to tell the people, okay, what is the purpose of the assessment task? We have to tell them, okay, what is the one? But I have to go further, one step further. As is, if I know that this paper was kind of copied from the source, and then I will have to write out, okay, this paper was copied from which, and so I'm not going to mark it. All right, and then I'll come to, I'm not going to tell them who did what, but I say, there are some papers I'm not going to mark because, and it means that just like what you said to your student, you say, yeah, because this person has lost one opportunity to learn from the feedback from the teacher. This is on one thing. But I think the key point is, I want to refer to the time when you say to transfer everything from the physical class to the online class. I don't think, I think that the word transfer is a wrong word to use, right? The correct thing to do is to transform, right? Not to transfer, but to transform, because the physical classes and the online classes, the two environments are totally different. And so why do we have to change the way we teach? Why do students have to change the way they learn? But why don't we change the way we assess them? So the audit, I think the best thing we have to do in order to deal with plagiarism is like honesty issue is to change the way we assess, we evaluate the student, the task that we give them, and the kind of criteria we use in order to evaluate them. And so in this case, I think that ongoing assessment, formative assessment is more important than summative assessment. Because like Hee-Jin, you say that we want to see how much, whether they can learn effectively or not. We are not in the position to say, oh yeah, I want you to achieve this one. No, we can't do that, right? So what we say that whether you like to learn, how much you have learned, what problems you have, and what we can do in order to help you to learn. And if you want to know all of those, I think that you need to use formative, not summative, and no exam, no quiz or something, but other ways. And project is a good way as well, to tell the truth. Okay, back to you, Lizzie.
Well, no, that's great. I actually completely agree that we need to reconceptualize the way we assess students. I think that there are two different things going on with this question, right? The first is the question of plagiarism, and the second question is cheating on assessments. And with the question of plagiarism, what I found is my students don't know what that is. They think it's perfectly legitimate to go to Wikipedia and just copy and paste. So I actually have to teach them what is and is not plagiarism, what they can and can't do. I teach them to cite their sources. I teach them, well, we don't spend much time, but to paraphrase, and what mosaic plagiarism is, which is where you take the Wikipedia page and you re-say it, but it's basically point for point the same thing. That's also plagiarism. Writing something yourself and then using an online translator, however, that's okay. And honestly, I support that, because this gets into the question of assessment. How do we assess them? Well, let's think about what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach our students to be able to use English in the real world. When you're in the real world, are you stripped of all resources? No, you have your phone with you constantly. You have constant access to online translators and all of the resources of the internet. So in my exams, I tell students, use whatever you want to. You can take notes, you can use my lectures, you can use my worksheets, you can use a translator. But that's the thing, right? This comes back to the teachers. It's up to the teacher to make questions that the students can't just Google the answers to. My only rule is don't ask somebody. That's it. Do it yourself and you're good. And between that and the fact that there's a time limit, you know, they have to do it all within 45 minutes or an hour on the final exam. That doesn't give them lots of time to meticulously research every question. And so you do get a lot of pressure. You get the students who have taken notes doing much better than the students who haven't. The students who understand it still do much better. The students who don't care, they're still the ones that get a really poor score, even though they have the entire internet in front of them. So I think maybe the question isn't so much how can we prevent students from cheating, so much as how can you reconceptualize what you're doing and what you're looking for in students, so that cheating isn't even a thing, so that your tasks and your assessments more closely mirror what students are doing in real life.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that we can move on to another question, and this is one. Well, good luck, panel, because I'm even at a loss with this one. So hopefully somebody can help us out here. And this was our actual first question that we got from the participants, and it comes from Mrs. Carola, and I think that she described something that a lot of teachers are either facing or worried about facing. It says, in my school, the students split up into two groups, studying on site, online, and a daily switch. So group A is on site, and then group B is online at home, and vice versa. And she says, my idea is to collaborate and bring them together. To learn together is to teach them on demand or via video conference. Do you have another idea or a better or a way to make this work when it's not just hybrid, but it's hybrid and a switch and a flip-flop? Does anybody have any suggestions, or have you been in a situation? What can we do?
I'll share the experience that we have. Actually, we are still under very strict SOP in Malaysia. So in my school, it's not like one group at school and another group at home. It's actually two groups of them at school, but in different classrooms. So what we did there was like live in a hybrid way. And of course, I would say is like something like one class, they have the teacher in, and another class is like watching live video. So I would say we can design some of the work on learning management system like Google Classroom, LMS, and we post things that they can always refer to and do revision with. So sometimes of course it's not the best way. I would say what's the point? Like one group of students going to school and another group of students stay at home. But of course, under certain circumstances, like when pandemic hit, we have to try to do it in a way that we have the lesser impact on students. So I would say I'll still put things like what we have been doing online. And at the same time, when they switch, we try to focus more on the main point again when they come back to school. So I would say the arrangement is not the best, but what we can do is to minimize the impact for students. That's that's the only thing that we can do now. Since it's pandemic, we had no choice but to observe the standard operation procedure.
I think that's very practical and just a perfect answer, because we can't pretend that an imperfect situation is going to have perfect results. Does anybody else want to comment on that? Or
well, just to be clear, this means that group A is on site and then B is online one day, and the next day they switch, right?
And then they switch. But it sounded like Weishan was in a similar situation, except like she said, one group is online in a classroom at school, and then another group is in the school, but with the teacher. So they still get, so yeah.
It's a very strange experience, I think. But if you have some students on site and some students online, is it possible just to have two activities so that if they're online, they're working on an online project, and when they're face-to-face, you've got like a clue game or something, a discussion that they can do face-to-face with their peers, and then just, I mean, can you make a curriculum that is specifically designed for half online and half face-to-face, and then they just do it when they're in the classroom? I wonder if that would be possible.
For our case, no. For our case is no, because they can't bring their own device to school. So unless they have their own device, then we could still do collaboration online, right? With their own device, they're able to log on to Google Classroom and collaborate. So the thing that we have to sacrifice is the group activities, I would say. Or we can ask them to do it, you know, after school at home, to like do the project, extending the lesson to online. If not, it's quite impossible, I would say.
Well, no, that's what I'm asking though, is why you don't need to do any online stuff when they're in the classroom, right? So that's the day they have a discussion in class. That's the day they have a clue game when they're running around the school looking for the objects you've described. That's the day when they do the murder mystery that you've contrived. Like I said, for my classes, we have some face-to-face. And so I just save all the really fun face-to-face activities for the face-to-face classes. And then the projects and stuff are online. So I wonder if you could just design a lesson where half the lesson is for face-to-face interaction and half the lesson is for online interaction. And when A is face-to-face, they do the face-to-face part. And when A is home for the online part, they do the online part. Like you could actually, I think you could plan an entire syllabus around the opportunity to do half of it online and half of it face-to-face. Although that would require a lot of creativity from the teacher. I think this would be a really fun opportunity, or could be.
Yeah, I'll try it.
And I also think, you know, what I like, Lindsay, when you were saying that is I think it goes back to just what we learn, like in, you know, when we become teachers the first time in lesson planning 101, gathering up what resources you have and then thinking about how your lesson plan is going to look like. And I don't think that it has to be, you know, those big, long 20-page lesson plans, but that extra column that we have of, you know, what's the interaction between the students who I'm with in the classroom and what interaction do I expect with the students who are on their own. And what I don't know, and I'm asking this isn't a question from the chat box, but what I think that I've seen, even though I haven't been in the classroom admittedly during the pandemic, but being around teachers and listening to them, I think that I'm hearing that a lot of teachers have been, especially teachers of teenagers, have been maybe surprised how well they can trust their students to get on the task. Or, you know, like going into the pandemic, they thought if I leave them alone, they are just going to be in the breakout rooms and talk sports and not get the task accomplished. But then they turn around and look and, oh my gosh, they actually did a little bit of what they were supposed to. I don't know if you've had that experience too, or if you were surprised by your students rising to the challenge or not. I don't know. Have you had that experience, or am I just dreaming things here?
No, but it's true, Alan. It's true because we always think that, yeah, I have to keep an eye on my student. I have to try to find some way to make sure that everybody is working in the breakout room or something, right? But then I got this kind of experience like 2 weeks ago. And then I asked my student kind of to work in groups in the background rooms and to draw some picture first, to copy some pictures from the book, and then they will listen and they will take notes, okay, put their notes around the picture or something. And I would say, oh, this is kind of note-taking skill. And I say, oh, it would be kind of boring. And then listening online and then doing nothing. And I asked them, I actually try to, because you know that if you are teaching listening and you just play the recording and the student listen and then do the exercise, I say, oh, this is so kind of boring, right? And when you are in a physical classroom, it's easy for you to have some kind of activity for pre-listening or something, but this is online. And so I asked the student kind of, okay, so get in group and then put them in the breakout room and then ask them to draw. As you can always use a whiteboard. The group can use a whiteboard. And then I found out that later when I looked at the product, I said, some of them were really good and they were so interested in drawing. And then they drew very good pictures. beautiful, coloring, a lot of things. And then, okay, stop after 10 minutes. Okay, come back to the main room, and then now we're listening. We're going to listen. You have to pay attention, listen. And after that, come back to the breakout room, share the notes, and then fill your picture with a lot of things as much as possible. And then it seemed to me that they were kind of more attentive because they want to share. They want to show up what they have. If they just show the picture and people, oh, they didn't listen to anything. But what they really have to show is pictures together with the information. And then believe me, at the end of the activity, I got very nice pictures. I got the notes, very thorough, very detailed notes from the listening, because this is the product, the collaborative product of a group of 5. And then we did have some other comments. Student created the comments on what we listened to, the poisonous animals. And then on the picture, the student wrote something, stay away from me, I'm poisonous, something like this. Is what they thought. And it was kind of fun. We had a very good time together. I was so happy after that class, to tell the truth. And so I think that we shouldn't, sometimes because we have the pressure of completing the lesson, sometimes we have the pressure of making the student to understand everything, and then we forget it. There needs to be fun in our class. And if the students have fun, if they enjoy what they are doing, they will study better. And that comes back to the questions of motivation, especially for young students. But I don't mean that games can create motivation all the time. You can ask the student to play game the first time, the second time, the third time, they'll get bored with that, and you have to change. But I think, active listening, in my case, for example, they have to really do something while they are listening, and they see the real purpose of the task, and they will become more engaged in the study. And this is what we can really, do online, not only in the physical classroom. Okay.
Totally agree. Lindsay, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on that because it gave me part of an answer to the question of one online day, one face-to-face day. It sounds like a lot of what some of these classes are doing, you don't have to be doing at the same time with each other. You don't have to meet together in a Zoom room to, do certain activities. So it's possible that teachers should be reconceptualizing what they think of as class. Give students an assignment to do at home on their own, in their own free time. Well, free time, it'll be their class time, right? Ask them to spend 50 minutes, an hour on it, however long your class time is. And then when they come back to the face-to-face class, they're prepared for the next step, which can only take place face-to-face. But I don't see why we have to rely on breakout rooms. Why not just say, okay, guys, go take photos of your neighborhood, go take photos of your siblings and bears, go interview your grandmother in your native language, and then tell us about it in English. You're at home, you have all these amazing resources, take advantage of them. And it doesn't have to be like in a Zoom class on the teacher's schedule or on the class schedule. Trust students to do it on their own, and then they're accountable for it the next time.
Fantastic. Yeah. Look, this has been, time for me has just flown by, and we're coming to the end of our panel. And I just want to ask the panelists if you all have a final word or a final thought you'd like to share with the people who have joined us today. Just from there, I'll just turn it over to you. Any final thoughts? Toshi, I see you unmuted yourself and looking. sorry.
No, it's okay. I really enjoy talking with other teachers. I really want to have this kind of opportunities, like building communities in the world. So it was really interesting, and I learned a lot. And so I have to learn a lot, actually, more. So it was good opportunity. So thank you very much, everybody.
And I think that's such a powerful net. I totally agree with you, Toshi. But if we look at your profile, you know, a master's from here, a certification from here, and you know all these things from Cambridge, and you're still saying that you have to learn more. And I always feel that same way too. You know, I mean, we get on these panels and people list us, but we still are learning more. And I love that. I love that thing. Anybody else? Wei Chen, you're next on my screen. Is there any last word or?
We do have to learn. I learned from just new graduate, okay, who just joined my school, and I had to learn the way he used technology, the way he monitored the students, kind of wonderful, and I have to learn. So do agree with Toshi. I learned from you, I learned from your questions, I learned from Lizzie, from Agent, learn from everybody. And this is what we have to do every day, because we are put in a new situation every day, right? And we are hit by the pandemic, and we are put in an emergency situation, and we have to deal with a lot of new things. So that's why we have to learn every day. And that's it. I think that Toshi got a very good point for that one. Okay.
Me, I always tell my teachers who join us, I say, I'm not a good teacher. I don't want to be a good teacher. I want to be a better teacher every day. So when we have that mindset, I'm always new and I want to be better every day. And that is like how we can practice. One who dares to teach should never cease to learn. So I think personal growth and learning is very important for everyone. And in this pandemic, I would say for me is a blessing in disguise, because from the past 18 months, I have learned from a lot of people in the world. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to meet online. And we should maintain this kind of vibe that we are collaborating with everyone in the world, because we are not alone. So we share experiences and let's do it hand in hand together. Thank you. Back to Alan.
Back to Lindsay, final word for us.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad I can follow up on that, because that's exactly what I want to say. We have new opportunities to rethink what learning looks like. And so I guess my final words, based on, well, you guys can probably guess based on what I've said so far, break away from the classroom as a physical space. Your students are at home. They have all of their home resources, their family resources, their community resources, plus the entire internet. So I would say just capitalize on all of those amazing things and stop necessarily thinking of English in the traditional ways that we have been for so long. I think it's a great opportunity. Oh, and speaking of beyond the boundaries of the physical world, look at this. We're all over the world right now. This is awesome and amazing. And come join Korea TESOL for our international conference and continue with this kind of conversation. I think this is an awesome opportunity, and the web is amazing and scary, but also amazing.
I knew you'd get CoTESOL in there some way. For those of you who don't know, Lindsay was president of CoTESOL for 3 years, I think. So, but it's exactly what Wei Chen said. Also, you know, we talk about teacher communities. Our in-school communities are so great. I know Lindsay actually from conferences, you know, and stuff like. So I mean, our communities are all the way around.